Hi everyone, my name is Brian Ray. I'm a peer tutor through Learning Support at National Louis University. I just wanted to quickly go through our APA format workshop, go through some of the slides, go through some of the resources, and we'll be sure to include links to those resources in the description or on the page that you're seeing this video. All right, so to begin, just to go over some of the goals of this workshop is to introduce the different components of APA formatting, and then to go into each individual section and what those sections are made up of, and cover things like in-text citations, reference pages, um, things like that. If you come to any of our live workshops, we end up creating a template, either in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, to help with future writing. And then again, as I mentioned before, access to guides, resources, things like that. Right, so to start, when writing in APA 7, there's a list of acceptable fonts and font sizes, and you want to be consistent with that throughout your whole paper. I personally always go with 12-point Times New Roman font, but if you Google APA 7 font and size combinations, you can see a whole list. These are just a couple other options, so like 11-point Arial or Georgia. You're going to want to double space your entire paper. That's including the references on the reference page. You want 1-inch margins around the entire paper. When you open a new document on Word or Google Docs, it should default to 1-inch margins, but just something to be aware of. And then those formatting requirements might vary by instructor, and we'll kind of go into different things different instructors will ask for, but there's maybe not needing page numbers or needing a running head or needing an abstract section, things like that. So always be willing to email your professor to clarify any expectations. So to do a quick overview of the components in APA format, if you're just writing a general paper, odds are you're going to have your title page or your title page information, which we'll go over. You may be expected to have an abstract, which is a brief summary, your body paragraphs, and your references. If you're conducting a research paper, it's going to be a little bit more in depth. You're going to have your title page, you'll have your abstract, and then you'll have different sections. You'll have your introduction, which is kind of the background and research, your method, how you conducted the research, the results of your experiment, the discussion, and your references page. There's also tables and figures that you can either put in your results section or on their own pages after the references, but that'll vary by the type of research paper that you're writing. Just as a quick note, the image of the APA 7 manual is one of the books I'd highly recommend either buying a copy of. I believe it's between $20 and $30. And there are free PDF versions of it online. It's a great reference. It's probably the book I've used the most in both my undergraduate and graduate studies. To go into specifics about the APA writing, for your title page, this is an example of a title page on the right. You're going to want your page numbers in the top right corner. Running head normally isn't going to be required, more so for research papers, and that would be in the top left. Your page numbers, and in the case of needing a running head, should match the same font and size as the rest of your paper. It will default to whatever Microsoft Word or Google Docs defaults to. So if you changed your paper to Times New Roman size 12, make sure to do that for your page numbers as well. You want to double space the page, and then 4 to 5 double space lines down, you'll center and bold your title. Again, in title case, so all of the main words are going to be capitalized. Then 2 spaces down from that, you'll put your name, and then directly under that, college or affiliation, then your course number and name, and then your instructor, and then the due date of the assignment. For papers where you are not required to have a title page, it's still important to put that information somewhere on the paper, so that paper can be identified back to you. So the example on the right shows that you still want to include your name, your professor's name, the class, the date, in some combination. It's fairly similar to MLA format in that way, but make sure that your name and class and due date is somewhere on that paper. And again, then your title would just be centered and bolded. So for the abstract, again, probably not going to be super relevant for most of the papers, but it's just going to be a brief summary between a half page, three-quarters of a page, 150 words, 250 words, and it's really just going through your topic. So in a research paper, you're going to do a quick consolidated version of each. So you're going to talk about the purpose, you're going to talk about the way in which you conducted the research, your results, and your conclusion, just about a sentence or two for each section. For general papers, if you're required for an abstract, you'll just talk about the topic you picked and your main points. So title headings are going to come into play, again, mostly in research papers, but at least the level 1 and level 2 might be relevant for general papers as well. For general papers, you're going to want, after your title page, you're going to want a level 1 header for your title again. It'll be, again, middle of the page, bolded, and in title case. When level 2 and level 3 come into play would be for giving titles to your body paragraphs. While probably not necessary, it sometimes helps with organizing your content. So if you were writing a paper about climate change and your thesis was something about climate change is an important topic because we need to set up our future better for our children and their children. We need to um, reduce carbon emissions and some third option C. For that first section, you could put a level 2 header, and that would be left margin, similar to the example on the right, level 2, left margin, bolded, in title case. So for that first one, it would be for helping with our kids and grandkids, so future-proofing the planet. And you could put something like that as just the title for that section. And then if there's different sections within that, so um, like increased use of electric cars or increased use of solar power, those could be level 3 headers, where each of those is kind of its own mini section within your first section. Again, it probably isn't going to be used except for in research papers, but just something to consider. For the body paragraphs for general writing, these are just a few good writing tips. So the body of your paper is where you develop your ideas, present your research in the case of research papers. Each paragraph really should focus on one main point. Um, they should start with topic sentences to introduce that point, and then the use of transitional sentences between paragraphs to help with the flow of your writing is important as well. Um, Again, the use of in-text citations, which we're going to go over more in a moment, is very important. So any information that you found from a source or that is not common knowledge, you should be citing both in the text and then putting a reference later in the paper as well. Another just general rule of thumb is not to use personal pronouns. So instead of saying like, I think climate change is an important topic that should be discussed more, just writing climate change is a important topic that requires more conversation. Um, and then the end of the paper should end with a concluding paragraph, which restates your thesis statement and then summarizes your main points again. So it kind of mirrors that introduction paragraph, then you go through each main point individually. And I forgot to mention before, but your body paragraph should follow the order in which you put your thesis statement. So to go back to that climate change example, future-proofing the planet, reduce carbon emissions, and then I just said C. You want to make sure that that's the order in which you present your paragraphs. An extra resource that I still use and recommend for everyone to use is Grammarly. It'll help with minor grammar problems. It'll help with clarity issues, spelling, and Grammarly Premium is free for all NLU students. You just have to link your student email. And I know that there's add-ons as well for like Google Docs and Microsoft Word, so it can live edit for you. It's important to know, though, that it's not 100% perfect. You should be reading their suggestions out loud with your paper to make sure that it still makes sense with what you're trying to say. All right, on to in-text citations. So in-text citations are meant to provide a brief kind of snippet of the information for the source of the information. The references will be much more expansive, and we'll go into that in a moment, but these citations are used when you either directly quote, paraphrase, or summarize information from a source that's not your own. Basic format for in-text citations is going to be the author's last name, and then the year of publication. In the case of books, where you have a page number, you would include a page number. On a website, when applicable, you can include the paragraph number. And there are two ways to use in-text citations. There's parenthetical and then there's narrative. To use a parenthetical in-text citation, the one that I think will probably be used the most. So a direct quote would be, "All fish can swim upside down." And then the author's name in a parenthesis, Ray, the date in which that quote was, or that source was published, and the page number. The same information can be also shared in a narrative way. So according to Ray, the last name of the author, 2023 in parentheses, all fish are able to swim upside down. And there was actually an error that I made in this example. At the end of that sentence, you would still put in parentheses page 22. And then these examples can also be if you have two authors. If it's in the parenthetical way, you would use the ampersand, so shift 7, so Ray and Smith. And then in the narrative way, you would just type out the word and. And then if there's three or more authors, you would use the term et al, which is and others, I believe, in Latin. And so Ray et al. In 2023, or Ray et al. Period 2023, and you would go on with your information. There's also going to be some guides linked later that will help with any clarity as far as the order of the authors, when to include extra names, and things like that. Just to reiterate, in-text citations essential to avoid plagiarism. It's really important to give credit to the original source, and it's going to save you from getting in trouble, either getting points off or having to rewrite the whole paper, or sometimes worse. If you can't find an author's last name, you can use an organization's name. In the case of videos or movies, you can use like the director's name or the channel name, things like that. And again, there will be some guides that go into details of what information you can use. So just to quickly go over some of these in-text citation examples, the site was dictionary.com, so that would be the organization. There was no date on that definition, so we just put n.d. This next one with Corey is from a textbook, so that's the author's name, the date of publication, and the page number. And then to jump to the example on the right, Tan and Wong, there's two authors who use the ampersand since it's in the parenthetical way. Their source was published in 2012, and paragraph 4 of that web page. So the references is going to be the more expanded version of your citations. References provide the reader with full details of the sources you're using, and the references should be alphabetized by the author's last name or the organization's name. If there is no organization or no author, you would just use the title of the document or video or something of that nature. When putting your author names for an individual source, you would not alphabetize them. You would just put them in the order in which they appear on the document. So all references cited in the paper should also appear on the reference list, and that goes both ways. So there shouldn't be any references on your reference page that doesn't have an in-text citation, and there shouldn't be any in-text citations that don't have an accompanying reference. So the use of hanging indentation for each reference is necessary for APA 7, and we'll see what that looks like in an example on the next slide. That's where the first line is flush with the margin, and then all of the lines afterward are indented in. There's different types of sources, obviously, so journal articles, books, web pages, and they require slightly different things for formatting. And so, again, referencing the APA manual or an online guide to make sure that you're receiving all those sources. Equally helpful is a citation generator, where it'll pull a lot of that information for you. It's still really important to know what you need so that if those citation generators don't give you the correct citation, you can edit it with the correct information. This is an example of some of our references. So as you can see, the level 1 heading, references, is bolded and centered. And then Beale was the first author on here. This next source didn't have an author, so we used an organization, and that is again in alphabetical order. You can see that that first line is flush with the left margin, and then each line after is indented in. I was trying to look for one where the names were out of order, but as you can see, each author is just put based on where they appeared on the document or the source. So at times on websites especially, the date might not be readily available at the top of the article, and so it's important to be able to find it. So normally look at the top left, top right, or scroll to the bottom. So for example, on this, for the APA style article that was used for this PowerPoint, when we scroll to the bottom, we see that it was created in September of 2019, but it was updated in July of 2022. And so when citing this, you would use this as the date, that July of 2022 date. And then since there was no author available, we can use the organization header of the American Psychological Association. So these are some of the resources and guides. I'm not going to click on all of them, but they'll be linked below. Citation generators, I use Scribbler or Scriber the most. Purdue OWL also offers some that are great. They do require ads. And then this video for Google Doc Citation Manager, I have not personally used, but I've heard great things about it citing for sources for you while actually writing. There's some APA formatting guides. I can click on this. So this is a great resource, similar to the APA 7 manual while this loads. This link will take you to the homepage for it. And then on this left-hand side, you can see general format, in-text citations, basics, authors. You can see like electronic sources. There's just a ton of different guides here that'll take you through examples, show you examples, and take you through the guidelines for each kind of slide that we've already kind of gone through. But I will reference this at least once or twice whenever I write a paper. And then again, these videos are some of our other resources offered at NLU, and they will also be linked below. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you learned something.